Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you. Welcome to Montpelier. My name is Bill Fraser. I'm the city manager here in Montpelier, and I am joined today with some with municipal leaders from around the state and additional people that have signed on to this this statement that we're going to read. Maybe just briefly, if the people in the room could introduce themselves. That are municipal Tess. Start with Tess.
Sure. I'm Tess Taylor. I'm the Housing and Homelessness Liaison for the City of Barrie.
Nicholas Strelli Castro, Barrie City Manager.
Tom Luzon, Barrie City Mayor.
Christopher Loris, Homeless Coordinator for the City of Rutland.
Liz McLaughlin, Select Board, Brattleboro.
John Potter, I'm the Town Manager in Brattleboro.
Christine Lott, Mayor of Winooski.
Mike Douglas, Mayor of Rutland City.
Good morning, Matt Wallace, Town Manager in Shelburne.
Chad Whitehead, the Town Manager of St. Hillsbury.
Thank you. These folks and others have signed on to the statement that we're going to read to you, and then we will have a chance for some of the folks to make statements, and then we'll, of course, take questions. So we are here today as municipal leaders from across the state to call on the three branches of state government to take charge of the growing homelessness crisis and assume their legal responsibilities for the unhoused. In 2020, Vermont reported 1,110 people were unhoused. That number is now up to 3,458, and Vermont has reported the second highest rate of homelessness in the country. The statewide usage of general assistance, motel, hotel rooms has also grown exponentially since 2020, but the number of available rooms is being reduced to 1,100. We stand before you today representing a group of local governments who are overwhelmed by Vermont's homelessness crisis. We need immediate and decisive action from all three branches of state government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Several municipalities join us here in the room, several more on Zoom. I'm going to turn the mic over to Mayor Christine Lott of Winooski to speak about how this situation has negatively impacted our communities.
Thank you, Bill. So while municipalities understand the financial need to move away from hotel rooms, we've not seen adequate planning or preparation from the state in anticipation of these closures. This has caused unsustainable pressures on local communities, which are being exacerbated by the curtailing of the hotel program. We also disagree with the policy of placing folks wherever rooms are available throughout the state. This has gone on for years and disproportionately affects communities and often separates households from their support networks. The state has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in both shelters and new permanent housing, but the fact is this has not reduced the homeless population. For over 50 years, the state has assumed primary responsibility for social services and care for those in need. The state created the Agency of Human Services, the largest state agency, and its network of nonprofit service providers. We believe, however well-intentioned, that the system is now broken. The state does not have sufficient shelter spaces, enough transitional housing, adequate support services, outreach to those in need, or accountability for the individuals whose behavior disrupts the lives and well-being of fellow Vermonters. Managing the impact of rising homelessness has fallen on the shoulders of local governments and local service providers. Municipalities do not have the capacity, the expertise, the resources, or the formal authority to address many of the associated problems. Our first responders can't keep up with the calls. Our residents are reluctant to use public spaces. Our limited staff are cleaning up unsanitary messes. Volunteers are exhausted, and our nonprofit partners are at a break point. Communities hosting large numbers of GA Hotel Motel Program participants and homeless encampments are bearing the brunt of unfunded costs for handling the increased service demands. Local governments have handled this crisis with a great deal of compassion, working with partners to provide outreach, offer support services, and keep places safe for all, including the unhoused. Municipalities have looked the other way when homeless encampments grow on town property, even when not permitted. And the unfortunate reality is that many law-abiding unhoused residents suffer from individuals who face no accountability for breaking the law. Police charges and citations are routinely dismissed by state's attorneys in the courts. People are released and free to continue unsafe, unhealthy, and even violent behavior without concern for consequences. This has angered residents and demoralized police officers. Public safety must not be compromised as we work to right this untenable situation. The fact is that there is no place for many of these individuals to go. Most private property owners don't allow trespassing. The state has not allowed camping on their property. Likewise, cities and towns can't formally permit camping on town property because we simply can't manage the health, sanitation, and safety concerns. The shelters are full, the hospitals are full, and the hotel rooms are dwindling. I'll now turn the mic over to Rutland Mayor Mike Dunges to speak on solutions.
Thank you. I want to set the tone. All of these municipalities here would give their shirts off of their backs to help those in their communities. And in fact, we have. The problem is we've run out of shirts and have nothing left of our resources to give. We see people who are moving from town to find help. We're putting out fires and we're putting on Band-Aids. We do not wish to see unhoused people shuffled around. However, this is already the reality that we face. We would like to see compassion for those in need and accountability for those who are committing misdeeds. So what do we want? What is our ask? We are calling on state government, all three branches, to take immediate charge of this situation and assume their legal responsibilities for this population in need. We are in a collective crisis that cannot wait until the end of the next legislative session. The state government has a Department of Human Services, a Department of Public Safety, funding relationships with service providers, vacant and underutilized buildings, and a lot of land. All of these resources need to be brought to bear now. Therefore, we're requesting the following near-term immediate action from the administration, legislature, and judiciary. The immediate opening of state land, buildings, and facilities for encampments, shelters, and temporary housing. This includes the state providing resources to support encampments such as bathrooms, showers, trash receptacles, support services, transportation, and on-site supervision. The state must take an active role in the siting, creation, and operation of more temporary and permanent shelter space. The current response, making funding available and expecting overwhelmed nonprofit service providers to make requests, is unacceptable, and it is not working. Shelters are not a long-term solution, but they are better than people sleeping outside, especially with fall and winter coming. The state must take ownership of their human services responsibilities. The Agency of Human Services must redirect its staff to provide direct services needed to fill the gaps in nonprofit service providers. We need immediate changes in judicial and prosecutorial approach for those individuals who are compromising public safety with their behavior. The entire state suffers from inappropriate and dangerous actions being repeated daily out in the open. Citations for criminal behavior are regularly dismissed. For the safety of our communities and the service providers helping our most vulnerable, we must give prosecutors the tools to hold, and then they must hold individuals accountable, including those who have been no trespassed by service organizations. We must ensure the criminal justice system is properly utilized in these cases and individuals afforded access to needed services. We must right-size and manage the general assistance program so that motel hotel owners are not controlling emergency housing policies and not dictating where homeless individuals are housed. The system, due to availability of space in diverse geographic locations, has separated individuals from the support system such as family and providers in disproportionately impacted communities across the state, regardless of their capacity to manage the impacts. We must provide immediate operating capital to nonprofit organizations and municipalities serving the homeless population. Bricks and mortar funding to support shelters and transitional housing is not sufficient. Municipalities and nonprofits are experiencing increased operational costs because of the homeless population. I'll now pass it off to, and I don't have a name here,
John Potter.
John Potter, to speak to long-term solutions and priorities for the next legislative session. John.
Thanks, Mike.
That's okay.
We know that long-term solutions to the homeless crisis will take a collective and collaborative approach, and therefore ask that the following issues become top priority for the next legislative session. Increase clinical capacity statewide to address needs such as mental health, substance abuse, and addiction. Allocate new funding for communities who host GA program hotel, motel rooms, have shelters, or have major encampments. The financial burden of services has been falling disproportionately on the local governments. Require the state to pay local option tax on hotel motel rooms for the GA program. Currently, the state does not pay rooms and meals tax. This denies local governments a significant amount of local option taxes, one of the few ways that local governments can raise revenue to address the increased needs and costs associated with carrying the homeless population in our communities. We were also interested in increasing the percentage of local option tax that municipalities are allowed to keep by the state from the current 70% local and 30% state split to a 90%, 10% split. We're seeking to balance the revenues that municipalities lose from hosting state-funded social service organizations with compensation for exempt properties and direct state support to cities and towns. We are seeking to allow municipalities to collect a surcharge similar to the 3% the state just implemented on short-term rentals to help mitigate the impacts of losing long-term housing in our communities. We are looking to enact policies and provide the funding that will create the affordable housing we need now. To realize the benefits of regulatory reform and zoning density recently enacted, new authority and funding for infrastructure to support new housing must be approved. We are looking for the state to extend the temporary Act 250 exemptions for housing until sufficient adoption of new Tier 1A and 1B areas are achieved. We are looking to continue to invest in housing unit creation programs that demonstrate cost effectiveness and timely production of new housing across the state. We are looking to continue to invest in transitional and supportive housing programs that are demonstrating success. This is critical. And we are looking to increase recovery and sober housing units. We need those in all of our communities. Another thing that we are very interested in seeing is developing a long-term, sustainable, and scalable strategy that recognizes many rehoused homeless households don't have the financial resources to pay rent. Aligning state and federal rental assistance programs and employment training systems to successfully rehoused homeless households exiting emergency housing is critical for us. We are looking to have investment in workforce training programs for Vermont's unhoused population. We are looking to provide broad reciprocity to out-of-state licensed social workers to help alleviate the staffing shortages we're seeing everywhere. And finally, we're looking to provide municipalities with more authority and clear legal guidance on addressing issues that arise in our communities because of homelessness and encampments. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Bill.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. This might seem like a bold task and a daunting list. I'm sure questions will be asked either today from you folks or from state officials. You know, how do we do this? Where's the money? All these things. Those are all fair questions, and those are questions we're asking ourselves every single day. That's what the local governments are dealing with. We offer, as this group of individuals and communities, to work with the state to help solutions as partners, but we need them to take the lead. We are just in over our heads. So before I close out and open it to questions, I'd just ask if there's any of our municipal colleagues here that would like to add additional comments. Yes, Liz.
All levels of state government need to recognize the real cost of municipal services at a local taxpayer expense for all towns that host the hotel motel program.
Okay. Thank you for that, Liz. Thanks, everyone else. So at this point, we appreciate your attention. We're happy to take any questions.
Carly from Dickard, Vermont Public. This is, of course, an urgent situation. Over the next couple of weeks, hundreds of households are going to be exiting the GA program. What specific immediate action do you want to see from the state to mitigate the situation we're about to see?
So I think Mayor Dunges, that was really outlined in his comments, and I think there's copies of the statement available for everybody. You want to go through some of the highlights of that?
Yeah, I can touch on, give me 2 seconds here. I can touch on so opening of state land, buildings and facilities for encampment shelters and temporary housing. People need a place, and that's what it really comes down to. And with, what we're facing is the end of these 80 days. And there's a long time between now and adverse weather. And even then, we have hotels that are in disrepair and aren't going to be able to reopen their rooms until they get back in good shape. So there may be even some challenges there in the future. So that's probably one of the first things is find a place. A place is important, and then the oversight is probably the second piece, right? Managing of and I'm oversimplifying here, but managing of those places, making sure that they stay clean, making sure people have access to services they need. That's been a big gap in the general assistance piece. Being a municipal leader, I've learned a lot in the last 18 months in this job. And one of the things that I have learned is the general assistance program was never intended to be a program. It was intended to be a short-term benefit for a very short-term period of time. And because of COVID and the way that things have transitioned, that benefit doesn't come with services, that doesn't come with help to find the housing that's necessary. And I know that the task force is currently working on redefining that, but we need to move faster because the problem exists today and is going to continue to exist for people that don't have a place to live.
Do you want to see immediate sanctioned encampments, temporary shelters, things like that?
Things like that, yeah.
In the absence of those, efforts being underway from the state right now, is there anything your municipalities are doing to, mitigate the situation we're about to see with hundreds of people exiting?
I think that's why we're here crying for help. We haven't been able to keep up with what we've got now, and now there's going to be more people, and we don't have the wherewithal to manage people on our sites. We don't want to chase people off, as was mentioned. There's no legal place for people to go. We're up against it. We run into situations where oftentimes the resources that we can provide are police officers or firefighters, and for many of these people, that's a triggering traumatic thing to have a police officer coming up to their site to just do a wellness check. We don't, so yeah, I wish we had a better answer. We've been doing what we can with what we have for quite a long time, and we're part of the reason we're calling this right now is because of the upcoming change, and we're basically saying we can't do what we're doing. We certainly can't do more.
And I would just add to that, Bill, that many of us have really good service providers working in our communities, but they're at capacity too, and they have no room in their shelters, and they don't have the staff or the ability to expand that. That's why I think the ask is for the state to look at what resources they have that they can help bring to bear in this really critical situation that we have.
Stephen Biddix with NBC5. It doesn't have to be every single one of you, whether it's Rutland, Barry, Montpelier. Do you guys have any ballpark numbers of what you're expecting for each of your municipalities come this deadline?
Matt from Shelburne. The state gave us specific discharge numbers for this week. So between Sunday and Thursday in Shelburne, 23 adults and 8 children lose their homes.
In Brattleboro, we're looking at up to 120 people, and these are people with disabilities, with small children, with lots of challenges for just walking out onto the street.
Yeah, I haven't seen the numbers for Montpelier. Do you have any for Barry?
We're thinking about 100, 140 for the area broadly. We share a lot of people travel between our community and Berlin in between. So.
And the town of Berlin is a signatory to this as well. They just couldn't attend today.
Yeah.
Morgan from Channel 3. I know that you guys have had a really tough couple of years, and I know that a lot of you have taken on, encampment policies, local encampment policies so that people have a housing a TIF district. I know that Rutland has done that too, but that can be really expensive as well. What kinds of things are you guys thinking about, you know, for the next couple of weeks in terms of maybe small solutions that might work for temporary, you know, situations for people?
I can't speak for the other communities, but I think we're all, you know, and I assume they will all speak for themselves, but I think we are all doing what we've been doing. I don't think anybody has any new or different tricks up their sleeve. You know, I think the fear most of us have is of encampments growing too large and becoming unmanageable. We don't have the resources to help keep order on a regular basis, to help keep things clean and sanitary. We're already sending, you know, public works, highway officials to clean up feces and trash. We have police doing wellness checks. We have firefighters. You know, a huge amount of our, in Montpelier at least, a huge percentage of our responses for public safety are going to the homeless population. And, you know, it's just because of their needs. And it's not, you know, these folks are just struggling to make it work. We have a huge amount of compassion for them, but something gets too large, it's beyond us. So we're saying, state, can you know, you have the resources, you've got the staffing, or potentially, and I realize it's a struggle for them. This is gonna be an easy thing for them. If you can open up some state land to provide camping and provide management services on site, that's a relief to all of us, because we are unable to do that.
So I would say that, you know, and I don't want to speak for, same as Bill was saying, I don't want to speak for all municipalities, but most municipalities in the state do not have the mandate, the charter, the budget, or the resources to support an unhoused population. And I mean those things pretty specifically. It's been a very long time since the charter or ordinances of Rutland City have addressed anything of this nature. Our communities are not prepared financially, and through our providers, I mean, we've mentioned it 3 or 4 times, are so tapped. The resources don't exist. You can continue to pile on, but you're not going to make a dent because those resources don't exist. So this is part of the reason that we're here today, is to ask for those additional supports. And the state, over the past few years, you know, like we said, we're here for help, right? We're not pointing fingers. The state has asked communities, what can we do to help? But the urgency and the effect of the speed at which government moves is not sufficient to address the situation, and we need to move faster.
I would just add, if I may, from Berry City, that on top of the municipality being overwhelmed, our really great partners as well, the churches are also, and we rely on them for basic services to the unhoused, and they're at their capacity as well, and I think that's probably shared amongst some of my colleagues up here. I would say that from our perspective, we're tackling the long-term solutions. We face the same challenges that our colleagues face with the near-term action. Our ongoing housing project on Seminary Street is going to have a quarter of it reserved for people exiting homelessness. That's not going to break ground till next year, so that's not an immediate solution. We are trying to address it. We just can't address the near-term options, which is what Mayor Don just really talked about, where we need the state to step up.
And Mike mentioned like some short-term immediate plans, but I think we're all aware the legislature doesn't go back for another 3.5 months still in January. So are you looking for maybe an executive order from the governor? Or like, what are we kind of looking at from that standpoint? Because legislative-wise, nothing's going to happen anytime soon.
We understand that, and that was why I think John outlined a list of longer-term, more policy, legislative things. You know, I don't think we're in a situation to dictate to the governor how they act. And we're not trying to single out the administration or the legislature or the judiciary as one, you know, group that's at fault. We're saying to the state government as a whole, we need action, and we need immediate action. We were just talking about this, you know, earlier informally as we're getting ready for this. And if we had some sort of natural disaster and 3,500 people were left without homes, there would be a pretty aggressive action to deal with that. There would be, you know, some sort of czar handling the situation. I don't know, but it is a crisis, and it's taking away from services that everybody needs. It's taking away from the use of public places, And most of all, the folks that need this help aren't getting it, and they're in tough situations. And so, you know, I don't, we'll be happy to talk to them about any way to do it, but we would like to see something, you know, as was just said by Nicholas, you know, whatever we might do for building housing, you know, that's not going to help the people tonight or in a couple months when it gets really cold. Said? Okay. Can they get patched through? Yes. The person online, could you identify yourself and state your question?
This is Ann Allen from 7 Days.
Hi, Ann.
I have a couple questions. One is there any dollar figure associated with what you'd like to see come out of state government? Have you guys gotten to that point?
The answer to that is no and no. We don't know what this is going to mean. We don't know what they would choose to do. What we know is the actions that we need to help with.
Okay. And since you guys know your communities, excuse me, do you have any buildings or properties in mind and any details about what you would like to see happen there in terms of housing people?
I think every community is slightly different. I'm sure people have different places in their communities. It's tough to, you know, I don't know. I'd ask folks around, and I think we would hopefully work with the state on that to figure out places. But, you know, at this point, a safe, well-managed place, and ideally with a roof overhead, is a lot better than random camping in unpermitted areas.
Yeah, and it does seem as though there are empty properties around Vermont for sure. So I'm just, this was a question directed at everybody really, to see if anyone had a specific place in mind.
I think to highlight Bill's point, I think the idea is that we would work with the state. We need the leadership from the state, and the communities would work with the state to identify those places. You know, I can think of several in Rutland that we don't own, but could be utilized, and the state would need to make those arrangements with those property owners.
All right, thank you.
If I might add, just on top of that, that I think part of our message is it's beyond the space too. It's the support services. I think throwing people into what may be now vacant buildings is probably no better situation if there's no support staffing around it. A lot of vacant buildings in Barrie are privately owned. We don't have any municipal space that's vacant. So it's, as the mayor said, you know, working with the state to sort of lead and be the leader in these conversations and help us with the support services that need to wrap around the people in these spaces as well.
All right, thank you.
The governor's administration has suggested at previous press conferences that, you know, people might have a place to go. They've, you know, corrected reporters saying that people will end up on the street. You know, they've specifically pointed to how few people showed up at the temporary shelters they stood up this past March. I'm curious how you as municipal leaders would respond to sort of that argument, that line of thinking.
I have heard from providers in our community. Sometimes there are folks who will end up on someone's couch or going back to an abusive relationship potentially. There are certainly, this is not the majority though. Like the idea that most of these folks have somewhere else to go is not true. And even those who do, it's not always a safe place. And again, coming back to the services, they're not receiving those. Even folks who have been able to get into, you know, a subsidized apartment or some sort of transitional housing aren't receiving the outreach that they need and the services that they need. And like many folks have mentioned, we have some great service providers in the area by us, and they are maxed out. They're not able to go and build those relationships and keep on top of people's needs and provide the support they need. And that's where we need more capacity from the state to help make sure that even if there's somewhere to go, you're getting the services that you need so you don't end up back in this situation.
In Brattleboro, the state did a really great job setting up a temporary shelter a spring ago. And I think that it was not used because people made arrangements with the motels directly between the the person being housed under the GA program in the motel to continue on there, and then the funding came back on. And so that's why people weren't leaving the motels and then going to the state shelter that they set up. I think we have a different situation this time. I don't think that funding's getting turned back on, so I don't know whether people will find a family member to go be with, or maybe they will. That's, I think, the hope. I don't think they'll continue to be able to continue a relationship with the motels this time. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's probably the case here.
Thank you. Online from Dana Gray.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for making this remote opportunity available to me. So yeah, Dana Gray from the Caledonian Record. I'd like to circle back to an earlier question that was asked about impacts on communities with the change of the general assistance motel voucher program, but have Chad Whitehead, the town manager from St. Johnsbury, weigh in on that if he knows what kind of impact it will be on the community of St. Johnsbury.
Thank you, Dana. So for St. Johnsbury.
Closer to the mic, please.
Chad's not sitting. Is that mic
I'm
live?
sorry. I see a mic in the middle of the table.
Yeah. Is that live, that mic?
Can
I'm
you hear
sorry.
me, Dana?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks,
All right.
Chad.
So thanks, Dana. I appreciate you putting me on the spot. That's great.
Yeah, anytime.
So for St. J, it's a little more optimistic. I was told there's 5 families right now that are in the hotels. I talked with our service providers yesterday. We got a pretty close relationship, just like all our other communities. I think the reason that I'm here with the rest of the communities is the numbers that I'm hearing from other towns, like the hundreds of people. They're not going to just, 100 people aren't going to just make their random plan or make their plans and fix their problems in a day or two. And hoping that these 5 families that are in St. Johnsbury have a place to go isn't as comforting as knowing that there's a plan. And calling the state to come to face this, I think is really what our intention is. And like I said, we've got good relationships with our service providers. I talked to several of them yesterday. I let them know that this was happening, and they were all supportive. And they're all on the fence right now, hoping that something can be, that the boat can be rocked, and we can see some efforts that equal the weight of the problem. So I think that's the intention. So as far as specifically for St. Johnsbury, I don't think the worry is as much, but it's still, these are 5 families. There are, I believe, it's 6 children, and as some of my colleagues have pointed out, they may have other alternatives, but they may not be safe ones, and so that's concerning.
John Walters, the Vermont Political Observer. This crisis that we're in was easily foreseeable last spring when the legislature passed a budget that included a reduction in the motel voucher program. I'm wondering, this can't be the first time this has come up for all of you. Have you been in touch with legislators, members of the administration? What kind of a response have you gotten?
Anyone want to take that one?
We speak with the Brattleboro legislative delegation regularly about this issue. They have not been able to bring a solution here that it obviously is going to be effective in the near term. I'm hoping that they can help on some of these long-term issues, particularly around where municipalities like ours, the bigger towns, have been burdening a significant amount of the impact from the GA program as well as the shelters in our towns. And that's all been coming from the taxpayers in our communities. That's what's been paying for that, for the cleanups that were referred to, for the increased cost of our police, the increased costs for our EMTs, and the impacts to our libraries. I mean, our libraries become the shelters. That's what is happening, at least in Brattleboro. And that's costing the town a lot of money. And so I think if the legislators can help get us some long-term aid, some long-term relief to help remediate some of the real impacts to our taxpayers, that would be a great help to our town at least. I don't know about the others.
Just in general, I'm going to reply to that question, then I see another one. I think we've certainly been in touch with our legislators about this issue for several years. And I think you're correct, John, that this was a foreseeable circumstance. We began conversations in our county a couple years ago when it first looked like the hotels were going to close, about trying to prepare and working with the state then to have a plan for this. And I think one of the reasons we're here is we see what is about to happen, and we are not aware of the plan for helping those, for transitioning those are out, and we suspect it's going to fall 100% onto the local governments. And so that's where we're at. And then back there was a question, yeah.
Jennifer, I'm Brister. I work with Good Samaritan Haven, motel coordinator and street outreach, and am very much on the ground, meeting with people daily, transferring them to different motels. As has been mentioned, so many people have been moved around so much, the most vulnerable to different areas as they're not fitting properly in the motels, etc. Now, from April, when we had the major exit, then till now, what we're seeing is there are a whole lot of people that are so have extreme social anxiety that the thought of being in these pop-up encampments or shelters, congregate shelters, is extremely traumatic, and a lot of them are scared to death to even consider that, much less sleeping outside in a tent, yet they don't have anywhere else to go. The ones that have definitely made arrangements. As you can see, the numbers are much lower than they were, thankfully. At the same time, we are at the max cap for what we're allowed for the motels, and in the next few days to the next few weeks, there's going to be a whole lot of other families that have, as I say, extreme social anxiety, extreme disabilities, that wouldn't really fit in a congregate shelter, but need a place to be.
Thank you, Jennifer, and just a shout out to Good Samaritan Haven. Can't say enough for the work that you all do here in Central Vermont and the partnership you have with our municipalities. I think what you just described really points out the complexity of this issue, that there is no one size fits all, and it requires some real dedicated effort to try to meet and work with service providers. And it's beyond, we're at really a macro level. Like, we've got people, we just don't have the ability to do that. So we appreciate you saying that, and agree that those are very real issues. Shelters aren't the answer, campgrounds aren't the answer, but there's nothing else right now. So what do we do?
We're seeing the same major issues in Rutland, right? I don't think it's an unknown fact that the hotels house more of the unhoused population in Rutland than other municipalities. So we have a very diverse population there, including those who might have issues with the anxiety of being in that congregate shelter. But one of the biggest things that we're concerned about is the family aspect. There's a lot of kids and in these hotels where their vouchers are going to run out. And, I think limiting the program wasn't necessarily a bad step, but not having the next steps in line and I think letting it fall on the municipalities is what we're concerned about. Because we're looking at it from two standpoints, right? We're looking at it from what's that influx going to be and the pressure on the resources, but how's that impact going to affect those families? Most of these kids are in school, and they're going to school, and they're about to go into these classrooms coming from a tent and a campsite, no shower, no resources. That's a big problem. And, Chris, I don't know, can you say a few words about kind of what you've been, your perspective on that?
I can. I'm not sure if, as Bill said, any of y'all want me to really have a mic. But in short, my colleague Megan Novak, who is a researcher, we are the co-homeless response coordinators for the city of Rutland. And what we absolutely do recognize are that at least 75 children are enrolled in the Rutland City school system right now who are in the hotel voucher program, the emergency shelter program. And we've started having discussions about how the city can work with the state and providers to mitigate for that number. And we're talking 75 kids. So from the mayor's perspective, from Megan's and my perspective, for immediate action, it's unfortunate that the city doesn't have the capacity to focus on all the individuals that are coming out. We don't even have the capacity to deal with the most vulnerable, which are those kids who are going to be, as the mayor said, coming out of either cars or tents or hopefully a couch somewhere, but the city does not have the resources, nor do we have the expertise to manage this. And it needs to be an all-hands-on-deck approach. I hate cliches, but that's it. So in the city of Rutland, it will be an all-hands-on-deck approach to address the issues facing these families. And I think that's what I'm hearing from the rest of these municipal leaders here is an all-hands-on-deck approach from the state as well, which is why the statement spoke to the administration, the legislature, and the judiciary, the state. And that's, in closing, each community has a different population who they need to focus on. And unfortunately for Rutland, given the situation as it is today, and it'll be in the next couple of weeks, Rutland's going to have to focus on the kids. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Thank you, Chris.
I'd like to kind of redirect my question to the uncharacteristically silent Mayor Lozon. You have a long, close friendship with Governor Scott. I'm not asking you to address like the political issues about like, you know, what do we need to do about this situation, but have you talked to him about what this is doing to your city?
I have. Not just, you know, the conversations that we've had are not just what's going on in Barry, but what's going on around the state. All of us who are here today are well past our personnel and financial capacity. You know, this was a crisis weeks ago. And obviously, we know that there are going to be more unhoused individuals that we're going to have to assist. We simply don't have the resources. So that's been my message to the administration.
Are there any other questions?
I'm sorry?
Get any answer?
Do I have any answers?
Did you get any response from the administration, from the government?
No, I have not. I have not gotten a response. But like I said, you know, I don't impose on my friendship with the governor. It's a mayor speaking to a governor, and you know, they hear us. The state doesn't exactly have excess resources either, but this is a problem that we've got to figure out.
You, Peter?
Would it be possible to renegotiate rates with motels and hotels and find some emergency state resources?
That may be possible. That is something that AHS and the state handles. We don't have any direct involvement with the hotel program ourselves. In fact, most of us, when it first started a few years ago, learned about it about a day before people were put in there. We didn't really have much involved with the advanced planning. Well, if there are no other questions, I thank you all again for attending. Thank my fellow municipal officials for speaking up and joining in this effort. And we look forward to working with the state to come up with solutions. There's some people that really need our collective help. So thank you.